I want to welcome you to our space. My name is Lori Teague. I'm the director of the Emory Dance and Movement Studies program. And tonight, this is part of a series. It's called the Rosemary McGee Creativity Conversations. And there's an endowment in honor of Rosemary, and she used to be the vice president, secretary of Emory University, but she's also really a cheerleader for the arts. She helped to create this space that we are in. And so this series has gone on for years, and it brings in scholars, thinkers, creators, and tonight, an activist. So, yes. So this is Alexia Jones, and I want you to just maybe, how do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I am a person in long-term recovery, and so what that means for me is for the last 23 years, I've had not a desire or a need to use any mind-altering substances to get through a day or to get through life.
Wow.
I'm also a mother and I'm a daughter, and now I'm the executive director of a recovery community organization called R2ISE. I am an upstanding citizen, and I love to dance and I love the arts.
Well, we met through dance and a project many years ago, and it was really, I had just moved to Atlanta, and it was called the 285 Project, about these, how we were sort of compartmentalized. And there's, you know, in art, there's ways that we, there's always ways that art finds a way to connect us to other people and to other things. So tell us a little bit about R2ISE and like the day it started or how it got started.
Well, as a professional dancer, for me initially it was about the art, it was about the technique, it was about the work. And then my addiction took me to a place where it was no longer about any of that. It was about being well. It was about getting in touch with the core of who I am. It was about healing. It was about answering some questions that I had for myself. And through the movement, I found the answers. I found the ability to sustain myself. I found the ability to say no when I needed to say no. I found the strength to push forward. And out of that came a spiritual experience. And I call it now the Baraka Method. And so the Baraka Method is that place where I found that treasure, those treasures within me. I am strong. I am courageous. I'm brave. But I found that through the Baraka Method and digging deep through my muscles and my dance.
We identify with, we are dancers and we identify with movement, but I know that R2ISE does really, anyone that comes to your workshops can create in the way that works for them. But I'm kind of curious how that got started. Did you meet them where they are? What are some art forms that have kind of taken you to an unfamiliar place as well? Because you're a dancer, so do you do the visual art stuff too? Do you do poetry? Do you do theater?
You know, I think as I begin to start exploring within myself, sometimes I would touch points within me that had sound. So I found myself writing a song. I found those places in me that came out in color. So blue said something, red said something, orange said something, white said something, black said something, you know. So that was the way I could express myself, and I still do that. But coming together with a diverse group of people coming from many pathways of recovery, I find that people do different things to stay well. They have their own unique way of expressing themselves through the arts. And as a way of connecting with other people, I started to dibble and dabble a little bit more in different things. You know, playing the drum, you know, painting, learning different techniques. And so now I don't call myself just a dancer. Before I was just a dancer, mover. But now I'm an artist. You know, not just in the modality through which I create, right? But in also helping people find themselves and create within themselves and find their full potential and become and evolve. That's why we rise, right? Because we not only embrace our recovery, but we restored. And so when we look at the word restore, we talk about how we go inside and work from the inside out. And then we're inspired to do everything that we could possibly put our hands to, right? And we know that the sky is the limit. And then we support, but yet we know how to be supported. And we are empowered, we empower others, and then we evolve. And so therefore we rise. It didn't always start with RISE. At first it was the Baraka Dance Institute. That's where we just wanted to get well, right? It was not the Baraka method. It was not that we were trying to do anything. We were just trying to share our stories with one another. And we had experiences with other dancers, with the Urban Bushwomen, when they came to Tallahassee for a dance institute in the community. And we started to share our stories and begin to use our hands as we talk, became bigger and bigger and bigger into these big pieces of movement, and with words to go with it. So we created what we call these choreo poems, and we shared it with police officers and fire chiefs and first responders and teachers and counselors and social workers. And because then, if you were a woman that was addicted to drugs, you were put in jail, right? And no one would ask you what you needed. So we found that through a creative expression, we can get people to listen to us. And then not only did they listen to us, but they empathized with the pain. They empathized with our past. They empathized with our position. And so therefore they were able to help people. So they were able to connect vertically so that horizontally they can reach out to others through our songs, through our dances, through our poems, through our stories. And even when we came together, there were moments where we had an opportunity to express that scream, you know, when women got their children snatched from them because of some of the choices that they made. Just giving her an opportunity to scream, and we scream with her. You know, giving her an opportunity to walk through that experience so that she could identify where that is in her body.
You were telling me earlier today, really, that you were a dancer, and so as you made a decision, I'm sure, to begin your recovery, to stop using drugs, that you would just dance and you would cry and purge. And so I want to know, and you just gave an example of someone in your group that by performing that, again, that story, that text, she began to heal. Who reached out to you? You are helping so many people now, and you've been doing this for 21 years. Who all reached out to you? What?
You know,
you were in your room dancing and crying, and then what happened? Yeah.
You know, and then I got up and I do it all over again. And then I'd start all over again, and dance became the one that comforted me. Because in the first 6 years of my recovery, I made a choice to practice silence, and because I realized I didn't know anything. And so I practiced silence in that I didn't speak unless I was spoken to. Right, so
what did that do? I really think, I don't want to jump over any of these steps because I think they're probably profound in your body. So what did silence do? And then you can please continue.
Silence helped me to quiet all of my emotions. It helped me to quiet my mind and my will. And it helped me to be able to take in all the good that was coming towards me, right? Because I was the type of person, if you said something, I had something to say. And I didn't hear anything that you said. So I learned, I learned how to listen, and as a result of being able to listen, I can listen to my body, I can listen to God, I can listen to my emotions. So I became a better listener as a result of being quiet. And there's a place in the brain that has no sound. I mean, it has no words. It has sound, but it doesn't have words. And so I believe at that point I began to tap into that part of my brain that only had sound and no words. And that for me was very healing. Now, when I started talking again, I remember a friend of mine was like, you know, you were much better when you weren't talking so much.
Glance at my
Okay.
questions. Yesterday you were talking about the group again and the process, and you said, you know, I don't fix people.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd love you to explain that to them. You know.
Right. The question you asked me was, you know, who was there for me in this
Oh, yeah.
in this whole process, and I can only say, Dan's was my partner in my healing. So there was no one there to fix me. Right. I believe that every person knows what they need on the inside. You just maybe need a facilitator to help find and dig that place and begin to pull those things out of your treasure box that support you, that take care of you. But only you know that. You know, I've been playing since I was a little kid. I always played. My mom was like, look, you got to do something because, you know, you're a little bit too much. So play for me was very important. I would create plays, I would dance, I would always.
You were a performer.
Oh, yes, all the time. And so, but that was in me. It got stifled by addiction, you know, and it got squashed. But as I began to dig back into that, I found my voice again. And people need to have a voice. There are some things that happen to us that have no words. So if you can help a person facilitate them through a process where, oh, that's your voice, whatever that is, then you help people find themselves. You don't fix them. You help them rediscover and discover who they are.
We say that in the Emory Dance Program, the students and us as faculty, we are making new work, we're performing, and we say that a lot, find your own voice, find authenticity. And at their age, they really are finding it, you know, and I think perhaps you're meeting people with addictions and struggling with mental disorders.
Health challenges.
Yeah, health challenges that they may have lost themselves, they may have never found themselves.
Right.
Like I don't know if it's related to age or just, you know, just where we are in our life at different times in our life.
Right.
You know? I feel movement is cathartic for me, and I don't know that I could have articulated that younger, you know. I just thought of myself also as a dancer, and I started doing it, and then I started making dances about things that it was excavating or unearthing things that were about loss for me and empowerment as a woman. And so I do know this story, but in a different way.
Right.
And so I can relate to you, although I've not gone through what you have. You know.
Everybody has a story, you know, and sometimes we forget parts of the story. It all depends on. See, trauma has a way of suppressing memories, and but movement and the arts have a way of sneaking up and coming out and having that place of, you know, this is what happened. You know, a lot of times we don't ask people. You know, we say, what's wrong with you? You know, we don't ask the question, what happened? When you begin to dig into what happened, then you have a lot of modalities through which you can express that. And we have one piece in the show that's called The Gift of Psychosis. And one of our players, she was went into the hospital, and she had a psychosis, and she sang, and she was, you know, in a psychosis, and she woke up the next morning and she thought, oh my goodness, I really made a mess of things. But everybody was like, that song you sang was so amazing, you know, and she had an opportunity to write about that and create a piece wrapped around her experience in the hospital. And it's not dark at all. It's about color, it's about dancing, it's about creativity. But the one thing that she says in that is, you know, yes, I was in psychosis and I needed to put my feet back on the ground. I did that. I needed that. But I also needed the doctors to be a part of that process as well. And inviting those that help us get well to help us create these places and spaces where we can figure our way out when we can't do it for ourselves.
I think maybe all of us, or any of us on the outside, and I want to say that in the correct way, but that the perception is that the whole thing is dark. But I
Right.
think that, I wonder if you could share a moment that was comical, or a moment like all the dynamics, I'm sure, of emotion are part of life, so why would they not be part of recovery? And,
Right.
you know, just, can you share a moment of deep discovery, or of pain, or of humor, or, you know?
I know for a long time I did cry. I did. I cried a lot. And I cried and I cried and I cried. But there was one day where I just started laughing and I couldn't stop, right? Because it was like, I was done with the crying. And so just the action of crying
Yeah.
and crying and releasing and crying and releasing brought me to a place of laughter and joy.
That's fabulous.
And even in my recovery process of going back to school as a dancer, I was very hurt about being put out and all that, not failing and embarrassing my family and all that kind of stuff. And going back was very traumatic for me because of some of the things that happened during that time. And I got my degree. And I was able to walk across the stage and get my degree. But the process of going through that and releasing and healing was better than any piece of paper could have given me, you know. I remember doing my final performance, and Anjali Austin was my mentor for that particular piece, and I would dance and then just lay on the floor, all on the floor, and just cry, and she just stand there very quietly, and you know, and wouldn't say anything, but she never tried to fix it. She never tried to fix it. She let me go through my process, and I walked away from there healed with my healing and my degree. You know,
great.
and that's what education should be about.
Yeah.
You should walk away better, stronger,
And a degree.
and a degree.
You triggered something for me, and that is the word activist for me. I think of someone who's passionate about change, who's sort of relentlessly focused, the courage it takes to be an activist, that's to move towards any issue of positive change in our world, and the hope.
Right.
That's also, I think activists are hopeful people.
Yes.
Would you-
Yeah. One of our pieces that we do is called Hope. That's the name of it. And the question that we gave each of the women in that particular circle was, when was the first time you met hope?
Mm.
And one of our participants, she said, and this was back in 1996, and she said, hope is like the sun that rises up and over the horizon, you know. And I would never ever forget that. And one of the things that we say is change is not easy, but it is inevitable. You know, I am the evidence. And so what we like about change is the fact that there's a process. You know, and you can't do anything without the process. A caterpillar can't become a butterfly without the process. And although it's really ugly at the beginning, it's got some nice qualities about it, you know? It's fuzzy. Then it has the strength to go up a tree, and it's mindful about what it's doing, and it knows where it's going. It's going into a place of change, which is not easy. And then it wraps itself in this cocoon, sits there, and then transform.
Maybe that's its quiet time.
Yes. And so the transformational part of change is my favorite part. You know, when you are evolving from the inside out. And then there's the breaking away. And then there's the learning how to use the wings. And then it's like, okay, now where do I go to share my beauty? So change for me is not necessarily the end product. It's about the process. And so even in Chronicles of Hope, all of our pieces are about the process. You know, they don't start out just, you know, everything is wrapped around recovery, and everything is wrapped around conversations about recovery. We have one piece in the show where they talk about the storm and the rain and how they come out of the rain, and why do we run from the rain? And but now they've created this whole poetry suite about the rain because of an experience one of the players had. She was sitting in the rain and she thought, why am I jumping up running out of the rain? And then she equated that to why she always ran away from storms in her life.
Mm.
And how if she learns how to sit through them and learn the lesson through them, then she will come out better. But she realized that water is good,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the flowers would just be, you know, and so she decided that in her process, she decided to create this poetry suite and also share her revelation and also be changed from the inside out. And so it's a very beautiful piece.
How do you know what to do? You meet twice a week with the RISE group. How do you know what to do each week, or do you wait till who shows up, or how do you plan where to go next? And I guess I'm curious about that as a teacher myself.
That is a very good question. You know, because there's no, the Baraka method is all about being right where you are and being in the moment.
So you're an amazing improviser.
Yeah, you could say that, you know, but it's also about how I could see how a person walks into the room. Like we had a gentleman yesterday at the Trinity House, and he was saying, I just can't get up. I can't get up. I'm just stuck. I can't get up. So I said, I invited him. And then I invited everybody in the room to support him. And I put 3 chairs, and I said, these are the things that are in your way. I want you to physically move them so that your body knows you're on your way somewhere. You are not stuck. So he couldn't get out of the chair. I mean, he was really paralyzed. He couldn't get out of the chair. So one of the brothers came and got him out of the chair. And so now everybody is engaged in the room. And he comes to the first chair, and he puts his hand on it, and he still just can't move the barrier. So this older man stands up, and I couldn't hear what he was saying, but he gets in his ear. And you can see wisdom pouring out of this older man into this young man. And the young man begins to tear up. He puts his hand on the chair, and I'm standing there with him, and he moves the first one. And the whole room is like, you can do it, you can do it. Now we're all like, move the second chair. And he goes to the next chair, and he goes to the next chair, and he sits back down. Well, he leaves the room. He goes and makes amends with whoever he was having an argument with. Comes back in the room, shaking everybody's hand. He's now a different person. He's now feeling all right. He's now okay. And I believe it's because he got his body engaged, and his body figured it out, not his mind. And when he made up in his mind he was going to do something about it, then that's when the shift began to happen. And I was able to then talk to them about, you know, everything is not mad. Sometimes you're frustrated. Sometimes you're disappointed. Sometimes you just don't feel like it. Everything is not mad. And we just have to work through those things to figure out what it is, what it really is. And evidently what it wasn't as bad as he thought it was, right? It was just 3 little things that he just had to move out of the way. And he was fine.
And so when something are there moments where things don't work and you just create another way for them to?
There are moments where things don't work, but I'm not here to fix it, right? So sometimes well, that didn't work. Let's just take a deep breath in and release it. And then we walk away from it. It might work later. But the thought of, at least I tried. I didn't just do nothing. It's about putting.
And they're there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the question that we ask ourselves. We don't ask what's wrong, we ask what's right. And if what's right, the fact that I got up this morning and I'm still yet breathing, you know, we know that as long as there's breath in our body, we know that there's hope. That's enough for me today. That is enough. It doesn't have to be, you know, this big grand plan that I had and I succeeded in achieving it. For some people, it's just merely, I showed up. And that's okay.
I have a couple. I want to talk a little bit about the stigma around addiction, and maybe even, you know, you say you introduced yourself that way, and do you still feel that stigma even in saying that you're recovering, you know, or what you felt like, when you were struggling with it, and just how our society maybe you're doing something very specific to support individuals struggling with this, but how can we learn and grow and make this better so there's less stigma around this? Yeah.
Well, I think, first of all, that's why I live my life out loud, because we do recover, right? We recover from broken bones.
Yeah.
We recover from a lot of things. And, but when it comes down to mental health and addiction, it's such a nasty thing. But we live our lives out loud because people need to see the other side of the war. Mm-hmm. We know about the war. We know how bad it was. But then at the end of the war, there's a victory. And that's the part we don't talk about. We don't talk about the process. We just talk about the war. But what happened after the war? Well, I got up, I brushed myself off, I turned around, I got inspired, I embraced my recovery, I became restored, I supported, I know how to support, I am evolving. And we're all evolving. We're all recovering from something. Mm-hmm. And what I am embracing today is when I first started doing the work of R2ISE, when I came from Baraka, Baraka was all about the addiction and coming out of it. And then R2ISE, we would have these sessions, and the community would show up. Well, I thought people in recovery from drugs and alcohol would show up. No, there were all kinds of people showing up. But I thought, well, recovery is recovery. It doesn't matter what you're recovering from. And I believe that now in our culture, that we're finding that everybody is starting to talk more about what they need. And we all need to be supported. We all need to be restored. And I think the more conversations like this, and the more people can see, listen, I was there, I was that. Now look at me. Mm-hmm. I'm an upstanding citizen. I'm a person in long-term recovery. Mm-hmm. That's why we use that in CARES, a Certified Addiction Recovery Empowerment Specialist, through the Georgia Council of Substance Abuse. They train people who have been through addiction to tell their stories, and to tell it from not a war perspective, but from the victory side of things. And I feel like because I've been through some things, and because I'm coming out of addiction, I have the answer. I can help anybody that's recovering, whether you're recovering from a earthquake or lost all your family, I can help you. You just start from the beginning and you go through the process. You take it one day at a time. You take it one step at a time. Sometimes you got to dance through it. Sometimes you got to sing through it. Sometimes you got to paint through it. But you're going to get through it. And so there's a determination that's stirred up on the inside of a person that has a determination to be well. And that's what recovery is about.
And back to dance in general, we talk about we want to develop, I would say, a practice mm-hmm. that keeps our body awake and growing and evolving. Mm-hmm. You used all those words. And I'm just curious, I'm hearing that it's very different for everyone. Mm-hmm. But I also want to congratulate you for being in recovery this long. And what is your practice? What mm-hmm. daily do you do things that have become rituals for you that you need to do? Mm-hmm. You need to do. Right?
Everybody that is that's in recovery needs to have a ritual. They need to have what we call a RAP plan. A plan that keeps you well and helps you maintain your wellness. And for me, it's I'm a very spiritual person, so prayer is very important for me. And then also I like to create something every day. Whether it's like, I'm just going to turn that chair that way, and see how that feels when I go through that. Or if it's just,
so you
painting.
Like to create change in your environment in a way, because it should, I got you. I do that too.
Yeah, I love that. Every day I create something. Mm-hmm. And that's part of my practice. And I do practice silence. I practice silence in my home. I think that's very important for me to continue to do that. Mm. Yeah.
I witnessed in watching one of the rehearsals for this amazing show that will be at the Performing Arts Studio, not in here, because we we've had a great turnout of people reserving tickets, and so we're moving it to a bigger venue. But I witnessed also collaboration, and I guess back to, again, the diversity of the needs that people have, and I guess I just wanted you to talk about that, and maybe how what works. I mean, it's it's a complex, dynamic thing that is collaborating, and that every session you do.
Yeah, it is, because everybody that comes to RISE is coming from their own pathway, right? Because there's many pathways to recovery, and everybody's story is unique, and recovery is a deeply personal process, right? And unique to each individual. So you have a red crayon, you have a blue crayon, you have a purple, a blurple, you have different shades of blue, different shades of pink, and that's how we come. And then when we come together, we put these colors together. We create a tapestry of artistry, of stories of hope that are real. And so therefore we don't perform. We authentically share our stories. We authentically share our hopes and our dreams. And people would just show up with a piece and read it. And then we'll all go, wow, when you said that, I saw this. When you said that, I felt this. And we take all of that and we put it together, we stir it up, and then boom, there's a whole beautiful piece of hope that's wrapped around a collaborative effort to share the story of hope, but also to maintain our wellness and come to a higher understanding of who we are. And cultural competency is a key component in what we do at RISE, because your story doesn't look like mine. My story doesn't look like yours. But we are always dealing with our own personal filters so that we can receive and hear your experience from your authentic place, and to be able to embrace that and create a safe place for you to be able to go to the next level. It's like a stair step in recovery. And we have one young man that's he does this piece called Fear is My Motivation. And one day he just did it, and it was just so amazing. And we thought, you need chains. So we got these chains, but we just didn't get the chains, it had to be heavy, and it had to feel, so he could feel the weight of that. So when he finally took the weight off, then his body, his mind, his soul, and spirit knew that now it's time to go to the next level. And so after doing that a couple of times, the process is, I'm letting that go. I'm letting that go. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go. I've let it go. And we're always giving each other feedback. We're always saying, this is what I saw. This is what I felt. Well, yeah, I've been feeling that. I've been thinking that. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? We always ask open-ended questions to help people get to where they are, because we're not here to fix anybody. We're just here to help you find who you are. It's a beautiful process.
It is, and I've only witnessed it once or twice, as you know. I would like to open the floor to you, and if you have a question or a way that you want to engage Alexia in conversation, if you'll just speak loud, and so that we can hear you and be part of that. So. Yes.
I'd like to know if all of the participants are in recovery, or do you have participants that aren't necessarily in the recovery process, but just enjoy being in that atmosphere and celebrating movement?
That's a good question, because in recovery we do have our allies. Those people that may not have gone through what I've gone through, but have a desire, right, to support. And when I first came back from Tallahassee, after being gone for 10 years in my recovery process, I would go to Moving in the Spirit. And that was my safe place. And it was a safe place for me because I knew every time I got there, we circled up and the question would be asked, so, how are you today? Or, there would be a check-in question. And although it wasn't a recovery group, it was my safe place. And they were my allies and my friends and my sisters in the dance. And so, yeah, I mean, there are allies in this particular show as well who really are very supportive because of what they've experienced with their loved ones, and just have a heart to help people who are going through the process. And they use their gift, their musical gifts, or their songs, you know, to help. Yeah, so, you know, that's a big part. That's why we say we are supported and we know how to support. So it's a both and going on there in our recovery process. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
I'm curious. As are the majority of people directing recovery, facilitating recovery, coming from a clinical, non-lived experience, education, head, place? Like as you
You come from an artistic place, and she's saying, what's
Right.
the balance of that in Atlanta or in the United
a
States?
lived experience.
Okay.
Right.
Like Alexia has gone through it,
Mm-hmm.
and
A lived experience.
yeah,
in
she
a
has
sense.
a
Lived experience.
and degrees.
Mhm.
But I'm just wondering what are the majority of people coming from it theoretical? And-
Okay.
And
Right. So what's happening now is the peer movement. Georgia is #1 in the peer movement. In other words, people with lived experiences are supporting other people who have gone through the same thing. That's what the CARES is about, the Certified Addiction Recovery Empowerment Specialist. And so what you have to do in order to qualify for that is to have that lived experience. And so what we learn in our certification is how to listen, how to support, how to build, how to nurture, and how to create these safe places. And so an RCO, recovery community organization like my own, there are several around the state of Georgia that's being funded by the state to create these recovery hubs where people like myself and lived experiences have get an opportunity to create a recovery addiction space for people to stay well and maintain their wellness. Now, we partner with clinical and treatment programs. So when people come out of the treatment programs and back into the community, we're there. You know? We're like, welcome home. Let me help you stay well. This is how we stay well. And that's what we're working on more now in terms of it could be a vicious cycle. You know, I go into treatment, I do really good, I come back into the community, I was getting high in, now I'm going back into the hospital. And so it sometimes it can be a vicious circle. But now with the peer movement, that we're breaking that cycle. You come out of treatment program, you come through the RCO, you create a new community of partnership, a new community of peer support, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing life, and we do it through the arts. Whereas before you may have never tried that. Other RCOs are very heavy on education, learning how to listen, learning how to do self-care, learning how to do a job interview, learning how to listen and just the proper etiquette in terms of working in another kind of field that you might want to go into. I had a really great experience working for an organization, and we were like the first lived experience people that they had in the organization. And so it's a insurance company that works with the state. And so what we did was we called people that came out of the hospital. We were able to give them a call, but the thing was I'm a person that has that lived experience, which makes it more personal and easier for us to have that particular conversation. So I love the fact that Georgia is really leading in this peer movement and breaking that cycle of, you know, that cycle that I go in the treatment, I come back out, go back in the same places, go back in the treatment. With the peer movement getting larger and larger, you're going to bump into peers at the hospital, in the ER. You're going to bump into peers at the police station, in the jails, in the prisons. We're there. That was a good question.
So Alexia, you've been a dancer and a choreographer and a collaborator. What was the defining moment in your life that pushed you to say, you know what, I'm gonna leave the safety
Mm-hmm.
and become a founder and start this, raise the money, do the work, create it? What was that moment where you had to jump off that cliff into RISE?
And burn the ship, yeah. So, well, you know what, Dana, that's a good question, because I was working with adolescents, and initially working with them, you know, they were smoking marijuana and kind of, you know, a little rebellious. But then they started coming in there, and they were chained up, and they were chained up. And it's like, wait a minute, you're 14 years old. Why are you addicted to heroin? You're 15 years old. And I thought, well, let me start dancing with these kids. Let me start dancing with them. And that was really wonderful until they graduated and went back into the community. And then the next thing you know, we hear the story about how they went back to the system again. And I thought, you know what? I like being a part of the equation, but I want to be a part of the solution. And I decided to step out, because in the equation, 1 + 1, I wanted to be the equals what? And so our equation at RISE is art plus recovery equals freedom. And so I wanted to be a part of the solution. I felt like we weren't asking the right questions. You know, we were asking, now, what happened to you? Now, how much did you use? Now, when did you go to jail? I wanted to ask other questions. You know, what keeps you hopeful? You know, what do you love to do? What are you passionate about? What's the next step? You know, and making sure that they had the tools to light those fires that they need to light in order to become the people and reach their fullest potential, to feel loved, to feel safe, to be valued, feel valued, and then give them a platform where they can share their stories and shine like stars. So yeah, that's when I decided I was going to step out. I was like, well, excuse me, but I think I have the solution to that equation, you know, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to share the love, you know, not just here in Georgia, but all over the place. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know this, but this month is
Celebrate Recovery, right? And SAMHSA with Voices and Faces of Recovery. We are all across the United States of America. We are celebrating recovery this month. So if you know someone in recovery, just congratulate them on their recovery and celebrate them, you know, because recovery is not easy, but it's good. And that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating the victory. We're not celebrating the war, but we're celebrating the victory. We're celebrating the fact that we have tools like Narcan that is keeping people alive after overdosing for heroin. And we're seeing more and more people that are overdosing living to talk about it and to get well and enter into their recovery. We're seeing more and more young people embrace recovery and making better choices. We're seeing more and more mothers getting the support they need through recovery and able to keep their kids and move on with their lives. Yeah, so it's a beautiful thing.
I would love, so this is an ask, at the end of your sessions, you go through this thing and I'd love to do it with them. Because I think we have all shed shame and blame and hurt and loss in our bodies, or we are shedding those things, and so help us.
Okay.
How do you do it?
So at the end, right, we say, you just repeat after me, right? And then at the end, we'll do this and woo, get real loud, okay? So we say, I embrace my recovery.
I embrace my recovery.
I am inspired.
I am inspired.
I am restored.
I am restored.
I am supported.
I am supported.
And I know how to be supported.
And I know how to be supported.
I am evolving.
I am evolving.
And I am empowered.
And I am empowered.
And so therefore I rise.
And therefore I
And I rise.
And I rise.
And I rise.
And I rise.
That's how we end every group.